Hey everyone. In this episode, our VP of Sales, Greg Bond, got a chance to sit down and talk with Jason Widup, the VP of Marketing over at Metadata. You may have heard of Metadata. They're a platform that helps B2B marketers automate their paid campaigns to drive more measurable revenue. Jason came up through the ranks from marketing ops, and he and Greg had a great chat about the role of experimentation in marketing and some of the specific tactics that he's used to drive pipeline for his own sales team. Let's get into it.
So here we are. We're back with the Revenue Marketing Show. We're in the trenches with B2B marketers discussing what is working and what is not. My name's Greg Bond, and I am here today with Jason Widup, VP of Marketing over at Metadata.io. What's up, Jason?
Hey, Greg. Not much. Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for jumping on here. If you don't mind, why don't we just start off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Metadata.io and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, so we've been around, I guess, for, 3 years or so, really selling the product that we have. So we're pretty new, but we're a demand gen platform that, helps B2B marketers scale their paid campaigns to revenue through things like advanced targeting, multivariate experimentation across platforms, optimization to revenue. So yeah, we're there for B2B marketers.
I love it. Perfect. It works out really well for us then. So I guess tell me a little bit. Give me the pitch here. Why are B2B marketers going with Metadata? Why is that the thing that they need to be doing right now?
Yeah, and I'll start by talking about how I joined, because I joined because of the product. Yeah. And so it was the spring of 2019. It really was. It was spring of 2019. And I was at a conference. I don't remember which one. And I started to hear, and I was working at Workfront, I think. I was like VP of Marketing Ops there. And I started hearing like some people that I knew talk about this tool called Metadata. And Metadata, we weren't at the conference. There was no, sponsorship. It was just like, I think it was like 2 or 3 people that I trusted in the ops, like in my ops world, were like, hey, you should check this out. It's like, oh, okay. And so I did. I reached out to our CEO, Gil. I got a demo, and I was just blown away. And the reason I was blown away is because it is truly a differentiated product. Like, a technology was different than I'd ever seen. And I was pretty ingrained in the ops world because, that's been my disciplinary in marketing for 10 to 15 years. And I was like, oh, this seems different. And I always like to dig in on the technology to figure out how it actually works. I was like, okay, this is actually pretty different. In terms of I was really attracted at first with the audience targeting piece, and how we build audiences in social platforms. But then it was like, oh, this experimentation piece. And, I've been trying to build this at the last couple of places I was at. And here it is, just off the shelf for me. And then the last thing that I was really excited about was how we think about attribution, because I hate attribution because I think it's a little ridiculous. But I was like, well, how do we attribute, campaigns? And we take the most conservative approach, which I love. So for us to take credit for revenue for a customer, we're really strict. So the first lead from a company has to be from a metadata campaign. That lead has to be the primary contact on an opportunity. The opportunity cannot have been created after the lead was created. You know what I mean? And all these things. And then if all those things hold true, great, we'll take credit for that. And we call it a triggered opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we don't report on influence. I mean, we have influence in there, but we ignore that. And I really love that because I'd gotten so tired of oh, we influence, in these marketing departments, I was like, well, we influence, $800 billion of revenue, and it was just this, it's this scapegoat, you know what I mean? Of oh yeah, we influence, look at all this stuff we touched. And it's all right, but what did you actually bring to the table? Where had marketing not done this, we may have never had that deal, mm-hmm. And as a revenue marketer, I am, it was that's the holy grail that I needed, and I tried to build those systems at places I was and never was able to. So yeah, roundabout way of saying it's got differentiated technology in there that there's no other companies that are doing it. It's also why we don't know what category we're in. Sometimes it's compete with ABM. Sometimes they keep their ABM platform and use us. Sometimes we're actually pulling money from agencies and the operational spend because of our AI. And so we're kind of in this nebulous area of What category are we? How do you pay for us? You know what I mean? As a customer. And how do you think about that? And so, yeah, we're kind of on that journey now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's two things in there that you said that I'd like to dig into is, when you talk about credit, right? Where's credit due? And I think part of, a lot of that goes along with attribution, right? And I agree with you. Attribution models have, they're good and bad, right? Like there's a way to be able to say, yes, we can attribute this person came through here. I want to know where they came from, right? I'm a sales leader. I want to know where they came from, and I don't really care who gets credit for it, right? Like it's revenue, and as you mentioned, being a revenue marketer, I think if sales and marketing are on the same page and they're both have this North Star metric of growing revenue, the credit matters less, right? It's like in a baseball game, who gets credit for the win, right? Is it the person who scored the last run? Is it the person who led off the inning? Like, is it the coach? Who gets credit? And it doesn't necessarily matter as long as you're all working together to drive to that win, right? And I would talk a little bit about kind of your perspective on that. Maybe winning as a team or even just credit.
Yeah, it's great that so I like this topic because I'm actually starting to think about this now. So, most marketers, marketing departments, marketing and sales is like, there's the split, right? You decide on a split, and you're like, decide, okay, marketing's going to do 60 and sales is going to do 40 or, 70-30 or 50-50, whatever, 5-95. And just by saying that split, you have to know how to attribute, right? And so already you kind of throw in this it's not going to be super accurate, or then you start to get into these edge cases. They came in as a demo request 6 months ago and then they didn't convert, but then, sales sent them one email or they replied back at some point. You know what I mean? It's like, it gets muddy. So I've actually been trying to start to think about can we still set goals between sales and marketing, but not worry about the split, you know what I mean? But still do it in a way where, because we just want to maximize company performance. You know what I mean? We just want to maximize the efficiency of our dollars spent, of our resources. And so by just setting an arbitrary number, it seems to me it's it's just so weird and arbitrary. And then when I see things like my sales team, they come to me and they say, well, Jason, the inbound's great, but also when I outbound, everyone takes my calls because they know who we are. You know what I mean? So they already know that even their outbound is well supported by marketing. And if that's the case, then okay, then I helped you open the door. You're getting meetings that you wouldn't have had before. So how do we think about this? And so I don't know yet. I don't have the answer, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think when you start getting, beholden to the attribution, right? You forget about the demand gen and you're only doing lead gen. You're only looking at what you can count, right? Yeah. And I think that ends up leaving people in a pretty bad position, right?
It does. This is what I tell people. I'm judged by my total spend and my total performance. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't have my CEO or CFO or anybody saying, hey, justify that. Well, this was a real thing. Justify the $7,000, you saw it, you spent on that truck in LA. You know what I mean? Justify, tell me how much revenue that truck buy is going to get us. If I had to live in that world, and I've told people this, you wouldn't know who metadata is. And that's really what it comes down to, because we can do performance marketing, direct response stuff, which will work for a little bit of the slice of, our prospects. But if we're not out there being different, being innovative, especially me selling to marketers, they're fickle. We are fickle. It's we've seen everything. Right. We see through it. And so we want to be surprised because we actually want to get ideas for our next campaign too, from a campaign that that's being targeted to us. And doing that, especially in MarTech, when we've got 8,000 other tools out there and they all sound the same when you go to the website, my belief is really the only way to win in MarTech is through a strong brand. And if you had to try and attribute all of your brand activities to revenue, I don't think you could do them as well. And so, so luckily I live in a world where I don't have to, give justification for every single campaign I want to do and its effect on the bottom line.
Yeah, and I remember when we met and at that dinner in LA, it was interesting. I remember you saying that a vast majority of your closed won deals come from hand raisers, people that are saying, I want to talk to sales. And whether that's they're coming in organically to the website and following that funnel, or they're through conversation ads. Like, these are people who are literally saying, like, yes, I'd like to talk to sales. And so, I don't know, talk a little bit about that and how, that's got to make your job harder in one way and easier in another, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, really from day probably 73, we stopped gating content, because it was all gated when I first got here, and it took me about a couple of months to tear it down. And we only hand over hand raisers, to sales. But like you said, that's often harder to get to than just a lead who downloaded a piece of content. Well, obviously harder to get to. And so when I started full time here, we were probably at like 20, 30 demos a month, and they would all come through most would come through the website, some through like advertising and lead gen forums, and actually a lot through gifting, honestly, back then. So we had like this pretty cool gifting campaign. So we had a lot come through that. But then the pandemic hit, and it was right when I started, and our CEO was like, hey, my bad, I need to slash your budget, by 60%. And you'd think that the goals would get cut too, but they can't, because we made promises to the board. Like, all right. So walking in day 3, something like that, because I was consulting before, so it was like full time day 3, and like, oh, great. This is what we have to do. And so we tried, it was like, okay, scarcity often drives creativity, and so that's where I was like in that position. And we found conversation ads. And conversation ads, what I loved about it, because we had very low awareness at the time, very low. And I couldn't fix that with ad dollars, because I think my budget was like $15,000 a month, like something pretty low for a high growth, SaaS startup. But conversation ads were brand new. Marketers had never seen them before. And so they were intrigued. And so that was part of what worked. But also in the ad, I could take somebody all the way through, awareness, consideration, interest, social proof, what I mean? Like all in one ad, because I'm like just branching the conversation and like, and so I was able to basically ratchet up those demo requests from like 25 to 30 to over 120, in 1 month. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is a new tactic. It's gonna fatigue, real fast. Everyone's gonna figure it out, and then I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose my first mover advantage. Fast forward 2 years later, and conversation ads in relatively the same format that I've done them for this entire time are still a majority, of our inbound and a majority of our closed won revenue. So yeah, it was just like finding a new tactic that was surprised and delighted marketers, and also got them to understand what we do, you know what I mean? And then a chance to hand raise and then get over to sales. And so that's been our motion, for this whole time. And we've been 70% marketing driven, since I started.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when you talked about that. You said, you're giving in this tactic, this conversation ad, you're giving them, what, a gift card, whatever, something, right? And to get on the phone. And as a sales leader, right, like salespeople hate that. It's like, you had to pay them to get them on the phone. But tell us why do you choose to do that anyway? Why is it smart to do that anyway?
I love this question, because I was a convert, because I was in the same way. So it was 3 years ago, I think. I was at Workfront, and we were doing a conference, and my head of ops was like, hey, we're working with G2. At the conference, we're going to give away $25 gift cards and also enter people into a raffle if they put a G2 submission in. I'm like, what? We're paying people for a G2 review? Like, what is this? I was appalled, kind of. You know what I mean? I was like, what? And I thought a little bit about it more, and I was like, well, okay, if you do it in the right way and you say, listen, I want an honest review. I don't care if it's a 1, 5, 3 stars. I just want honesty, and you're going to take the time to do this. And so I want to show you that your time is valuable. How can I do that? Money. And so I was like, oh, and then when I was at Workfront, it worked. And I was like, oh my God, we just got a ton of reviews. So I was manning the booth. We had a line at the booth. You know what I mean? I was like, okay. And so then when I got here, I had only seen gift card campaigns like one or two. You know what I mean? I remembered one. Somebody offered me a Sonos, and I was like, they're crazy. Like, how do they know who I am? You know what I mean? How do they know I'm the right person? And I filled it out, and I got denied because I wasn't the right person. But I was like, it was kind of stuck in my mind. And so here, I was like, okay. And my frame was, one, I'm going to be so good at targeting that it's going to be the right person at the right company, no matter what. So like, even if they take the $100 and in their mind, it's just like, I'm just going to take this $100 and I'm going to give them an hour of my time and I'll listen, but not interested. Right. I know I'm not going to buy right now. I'm 150% okay with that because I already knew that the $100 was going to take timing out of it. So like, I'm not hitting them with the pain, right? Where they're like, I'm having this pain right now. I need to solve it right now. I'm hitting them with the pain of being poor. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm hitting, the pain I'm hitting. But actually, and in the first part of the pandemic, it was a $100 DoorDash gift card. So it actually was clever and made sense because, right, we were all stuck at home. We were tired of cooking at home. And it was just really clever. It was like, so it made sense. But then it just turned into an Amazon gift card. We still use DoorDash, you know what I mean? And just turned into money. But the psychology for me is if it's the right person at the right company and we get in front of them first with a demo because I know how good our platform is and that it's differentiated, that they'll have never seen anything like it before, that I'll have that emotional light bulb moment go off for them in that demo. And then that's all I need because then when they are ready, when they do have that pain, hopefully they'll remember what they saw in that demo and they'll come back. And that's exactly what happened. So we even analyzed like conversion rate on incentivized versus unincentivized demos. And it was a 5x difference of course, unincentivized, right? Converted 5x faster when you look at a single opportunity. But then when you actually look at the same account over time, they actually beat the organic ones. And so when we saw that, it took a year for us to see that, right? Because people come back and over a year long, they either had a vendor, they need to get rid of it to free up budget or, how the cycles go. We proved it and we were like, great. And so, and in the beginning, we've had some people, of course, some naysayers, like, why would you, but like way less than you would ever think, I thought I would get hammered, on LinkedIn or like, oh, is your product good enough? Like if you have to offer $100, is it really good enough? Well, guess what? We grew like 711% in the last, you know what I mean? Right, so like, right. I think so, Yeah. Now, if you were to try to do it and you didn't have product market fit, it's going to fail miserably. Like, so you've got to have the right things in place first. You can't make up for like a bad product market fit with $100 incentive. You know what I mean? Of course not. But if you've got those things and you have low awareness, so now we don't have to use it as much. We still do because like it's actually become just a part of our B2B marketing culture now, which is interesting. But we don't have to use it as much. And it still works. I'm still actually surprised. I'm like, who has not seen my ad in 2 years? Like,
there's still people out there who haven't seen it. That's weird.
Somebody sent me, and I felt embarrassed. Somebody sent me this picture. They searched for my name in their messages, and literally once a month, it was just boom, 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 because that's what LinkedIn does. You can only get one conversation at every 30 days. I happen to win with her every time, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I will put you on an exclusion list as soon as possible.
Yeah. So, along those lines, and this is what I think is so interesting about LinkedIn conversation ads, is it's almost like an SDR or a BDR, but it's going through LinkedIn and it can be automated. It can come from, you or someone with a title that, a B2B marketer is going to want to talk to. Right.
Yep.
And we talked about this at that dinner briefly, was that, is the SDR or BDR type role, is that dying? Is that something that is not sustainable anymore? Because people aren't answering their phones anymore. Everyone has on their cell phone, it tells you if it's spam or not, right? Like, we've been hit up by these things so many times. The last thing, like you and I, the last person that we're going to want to talk to at the end of of our day is a BDR who we know is young and straight out of college and first sales job, right? Like what do they have valuable to add? And I think you had a really nice perspective on this. So you mind sharing?
Well, we'll see if I say the same thing as I did a couple of weeks ago. We'll see. So the way I think about it, yes, if I first see like a BDR message and I know that it's a BDR, the first thing that goes in my mind is like, oh, it's their first job. How cute. They're making $60K a year. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, and they're just cold calling all day. And it's like the worst, hardest job, And so I feel some empathy for them, like right out of the bat. But you're right. Most SDRs don't know enough about my life, my pain, my experience, the product, even sometimes, their own product.
Right.
To actually, for me to spend my time with them. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to get anything out of it. But if there's a BDR or SDR that actually engages me with a headline or the first sentence that like gives me some inkling that I can learn something new from them, or I'll be able to have some kind of fruitful brainstorm with them about something, then I don't really care about the title. Then I'll lean in. But it absolutely is harder to get through it with the title, right? So if you're coming through LinkedIn and I'm like BDR, honestly, most of the time I don't even accept the connection. And so like you just have to get to me, and I never answer my phone. So if I don't recognize the number, 0% chance I'm answering my phone. And so, so it's hard. And I think, but there are some damn good BDRs out there at the same time. And that like I will admit ours is great, but she's great for us, you know what I mean? And she's great for us because we have a certain personality, you know what I mean? And she can be incredibly wacky and it fits with our company's personality. Like she did one where, and I was like, she dressed up like Princess Leia, literally. She found an app that made it look like the hologram app, and she like put her Princess Leia voice on. And I was just like, at first I was like cringy. And then I was like, oh my God, like this would be hilarious. Like this would actually be hilarious. And I would respond to it, And she did a lot of testing and got to the point where she got it dialed to minimize the amount of personalization, but do enough, you know what I mean, where it works. And so, but it's also easier on inbound. So if you think about the outbound though, just like straight up outbound, that is so hard. And I honestly think that should shift to the AE. You know what I mean? Like it should just shift to the AE because let's think about the psychology of it too. Oh, so I'm good enough for your 20-year-old inexperienced person to spend time calling me, but I'm not good enough for your seasoned, experienced AE to call me. So like even right out of the gate, the psychology of it makes no sense. Because it's like, well, I'm on your target account, then why, So I think that's the hard part. And why is that? It's a volume game. Well, if it's a volume game, then let me take a second guess. Your targeting is off, your ICP is off. So like if you can nail your targeting and your ICP with the right people, then then why wouldn't the AE want to have that first conversation, and give themselves a better chance of winning it? So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I don't have a ton of experience with SDRs in that world, but I have a ton of experience being sold and marketed to, and that seems to be that's how I think about it.
Agreed. I'm curious too, because we've talked about this internally a few times. Should the SDR role morph into more of a marketer than a salesperson, right? Someone who is out there creating conversations that live in the world. Is that it sort of starts to fall into demand gen, right? But it is having those conversations. And maybe you need somebody who is a little more savvy and a little smarter. Maybe it is your AEs that are doing it, but getting that.
Here's what I like, here's what I like for an SDR role is as a consultant, you know what I mean? Like a consultant to the prospect. So here's what I like. Let me just offer myself up. You know what I mean? I'm not going to try but maybe I see you downloaded a piece and if I've got some intelligence where I know who you are or you're on drift, you know what I mean? I'm communicating to you. Let me just make myself available. Hey, if you don't want to go through all this technology, I'm a human over here that can help you. If you've got questions, I can make sure I can be like your personal concierge, you know what I mean? While you're learning about metadata, that I think is a great role. And that's a marketing role, because that's like, okay, listening to what they need, figuring out like, okay, here's a good piece of content for you. I hear what you're saying, So I like the SDR role in that capacity, but just straight up outbound and just like running through numbers and stuff. Like, I don't know, It probably works for some. Maybe some people think it works and it really doesn't. I don't know, but
yeah, interesting. So one of the topics that I always like to kind of go down, and I mentioned this to you earlier. I don't know that if you have this problem, because of the way your sales process works with a lot of inbound hand raisers, but sales and marketing alignment and aligning on, you're a revenue marketer. The North Star metric is revenue, right? If everyone agrees that that's the way we're going, there should be pretty good alignment. But inevitably, they end up with this finger pointing where you're trying to give credit to one person or the other. So talk a little bit about your experience with kind of that sales and marketing misalignment, and how to get them aligned on the same goals.
Yeah. Here at Metadata, we've had good, like really strong sales and marketing alignment from day one. Part of it, honestly, was probably because Olivier, Clay, and myself actually all started right around the same time. And so I kind of equate some of it to that, because like we're all new at this new company that we don't know if it's going to work, and we're in the trenches together immediately, thinking through strategies, go to market, and that kind of thing. So I think just the fact that we were all there, green, new at the same time, got it started off, pretty well. And then there's a couple things. First, I let them know that I understand my place. Marketing is a sales support function. And I let them know that. I'm like, I'm here to support you guys and serve you in sales. You know what I mean? And so let me just tell you that from the beginning. And of course, any salesperson is probably going to like that, because there's a lot of marketers out there that are like, no, the nose up in the air, like, no, we're the one. Yeah, don't touch our brand, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, no, it's my job to drive sales, and so make your job easier. That was first. And then just always showing them that I'm laser focused on revenue. So they always knew, like, I'm going to demo requests, and I know how those demo requests matriculate down into opportunities, and I know our ASP. So I actually built our company's first demand model across the entire org, sales, marketing, et cetera, customer success. And that thing was accurate every quarter. You know what I mean? And so that also built trust. And then telling them I'm not going to hand over, gated content leads, or like booth scans, you know what I mean? Or like that kind of stuff. I was like, you guys are just going to get demo requests. And then I think the last thing is always like never be defensive about stuff. So like if sales says, oh man, I don't like this set of leads over here, don't get defensive immediately. Well, but you said, okay, why? Dig in and be curious, and be genuinely curious. There's a lot of marketers out there that will hand wave, like, oh, tell me why. And they just goes in one ear out of the other, because they literally think that they're doing everything perfectly, and they're not. So I always have an open mind. I don't care how successful I am anywhere, how much experience I have. I'm always open to the fact that this is not good enough still. This is still not the best it can be. And so having that mindset of continuous improvement, and that like it's not ever going to be good. Like it'll never be like, that sounds funny, but that's how I think it'll never be good enough. You know what I mean? So that means we'll always try and make it better. And then saying that, but then also showing it through your actions, so you can't just say that and like not live it. Then when you live it, and then it just, that alignment is there. I think where sales and marketing alignment goes wrong is it can go wrong in both sides. First, if the sales org just doesn't believe in marketing, you know what I mean? And there's a lot that are that way. And there's a lot of salespeople that have had that experience, and they've had the bad marketing experience. So they have that in them. And so they're just like, no, it's sales, and that's how we do this. So people that have had a negative experience, and then they come in and then cascade that down through the org. And then you have this, like, it's the opposite. The salespeople's noses are up in the air. You know what I mean? They're like, you guys, like, your leads are bullshit. Like, influence, like, go brew some more kombucha and put your scarf on, And so, but like, so then it can go the other way too. So like the marketer, and this is where it usually goes wrong from marketing, is they aren't honest with themselves. And the marketers aren't honest with themselves. And they literally talk themselves into, no, these leads are good enough. You know what I mean? They talk themselves into things. They're not willing to look at where it might go wrong. They'll put themselves in the shoes of the salespeople. Like, be empathetic with the sales rep. Would you want to call out to this person, based on what they did? Actually ask yourself that. And so both sides can taint the relationship, pretty bad. And so, yeah, but just being honest, like honesty, don't sugarcoat things. Sales, very direct usually. Like the personalities can be different. And sometimes that turns marketers off. And I think scares them sometimes, like the directness of a sales leader, you know what I mean? Right. And sometimes we don't know how to take it. And so like, put your big boy pants on, be confident about what you're doing, but be based in data, you know what I mean? So that like, it's never well, I think, and then, but influence, just put influence out of your vocabulary, right. And just focus on like the data that is solid, that you can prove that things are happening or not.
Yeah. And, with your background in kind of marketing operations, right? I'm assuming that you set up a system for revenue growth that includes those feedback loops, and how much time, how much effort do you put into kind of looking at, hey, what sold, what worked, what didn't work, and how do we feed that back into the top of the funnel here to figure out where we're going to go get more of that?
Yeah. So this is where people might start to think that I have an obsessive compulsive disorder. People may be calling my psychiatrist for me after this. No. So I look at pipeline every single day. And I look at demo requests every single day. And I do that so that I can recognize patterns. So my brain, is decent at recognizing patterns. And so I can just like literally look at the number of demos that come in on a day, comb through them. I look at the opportunities every single day. And over time, I just start to like recognize things, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, why are we all of a sudden, our tier A demos are going way up. Like, what did we do? Why is that? And I just start to notice things, and I start to then I dig in a little bit. And now that I've got a team, I have somebody that looks at the opportunities every day and pulls our numbers and all our numbers, but I still get in there, because it's helpful, and it feels like I'm kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of things. And I think it's, but here's why it's awesome, is because we identify patterns before they become an issue. And so we can identify a downturn in demos in 2 days, and we can course correct that very quickly without waiting for a weekly report, or maybe waiting for my agency to say something. Because we're on it every single day, we notice it very fast, and we can course correct if we have to. And that's been one of the reasons why we meet or beat our number every single quarter, because we're just on top of it. And so, yeah, we've set up some good systems to track. I wouldn't say it's great, it's good. It's probably really good for the size we are, and kind of the place we're at because of my ops background. So that stuff is good, but we have a long way to go. But yeah, we're always looking at, so right now what we're doing, a big analysis we're doing is just, so we've stepped up our ASP really fast. So last year it was in the 30s and 30,000 a year. Now it's all in the 60s somehow. We really haven't changed our pricing much. It's mostly been through targeting. And so when I realized that, and so this is awesome, because I was like, oh my God, I have to drive so much less demand if I just get that ASP up. And it was just I was like, I'd never gone through that before for some reason, but I was like, this is awesome. And it can have a huge difference. You know what I mean? And so we were like, okay, now what can we do to get it up even higher? And so we're doing a big analysis just to say okay, what are all the accounts we've converted at over 80K? And then we're not just looking at the standard firmographic stuff, right? Because that's just everybody has that nailed. But things okay, and this is what we're doing, the date they closed, when was their recent funding before that? Mm-hmm. It was recent. We also have G2 data that goes, G2 intent data that goes back, that we can center around a certain date. Were they showing intent, in G2? Were they researching? Then I'm working with, and I'm not going to say his name because I don't want anyone else using him yet. I'm working with this guy that I've known for a long time, who has built this new way of scoring accounts that is using all this other external data that I've never had. And so dropping account, into there and letting them run through. And so trying to, just so this big massive like analysis exercise, and then we'll refocus our target, and we'll see like actually can we affect ASP quickly, with something like this. And so we're always looking for, and I think because of my analytics background, I always have the interesting like things to look at, and like and like let's combine this with this, or let's look at the timing from this to this. And so I think that helps the team like dig in a little bit more and get to some interesting answers.
Yeah, it sounds like experimentation is a big part of your process here, trying to dig into the numbers and figure out how to solve some problems.
Yep, and that's my personal life and my professional life, so it carries over. Yeah, it carries over.
So, one last thing that I want to kind of cover with you is, in this podcast, we talk about a lot about kind of what's working, what's not, and someone who's gone through a lot of that experimentation. There anything you see coming, anything that you're like really interested in, looking forward, future thinking? Hey, this seems interesting. That seems interesting. What could you share with the audience here?
Yeah. So, a lot of my B2B marketing friends are not going to like this, but TikTok. I apologize for everybody, but I'm 45 years old, and we are going to be on TikTok. It's just, I actually had the stat the other day that TikTok ad revenue just surpassed Twitter and Snapchat combined. So it's like the fastest growing, and actually, I think within a couple months, it's going to actually surpass YouTube in terms of daily, the hours. How they measure like the hours viewed. You know what I mean, through the platform, and it's just like, whoa. I've never seen anything explode that fast in my lifetime in terms of like, a network of, people, of captive people. And so we're definitely we're already in the process of that, like trying to figure that out. And some B2B marketers are already there with some organic stuff, but we're going to start to go all in on paid and see how that works. So that'll be interesting. Email. I'm actually trying to we haven't used email really at all in marketing here. And the new head of demand gen I've got on my team is an email specialist. So she's actually at one of her last roles. Cold email outbound for marketing was one of their primary sources, and I know email can work if you're good and clever with it. So I really want to try that, because what's better than something free? And all the data is out there that's readily available on email addresses. So I'm excited about that. Experiences. And so in person back again, and so we did, the dinner the other, last week or a couple weeks ago. Want to do more things like that, because there's really no replacement, and we've all been, holding up. I've been to a couple of networking events recently, and it's just like, these are nice, these are nice and fun. And we learn a lot. I learned, I went to a Sendoso event last night and got to talk to their CEO and just got to learn stuff that I wouldn't learn, just stuff that they're building, working on, you know what I mean? I churned from them a while ago, and now I'm like, oh shoot, I wish I would have seen what was coming. So those, and this combination of community and events. And so, is community the next something, is it the next led growth, kind of motion? Mm-hmm. I don't know, and this is where I don't participate in a lot of communities, so I don't have a lot of experience of when I participated in this, it got me closer to that platform, and then I went and bought, so I don't have my own personal, but I see it working. I see a lot of people doing it. And so, but are we going to get oversaturated with communities, probably, and then we're going to have a bunch of communities, and we're going to have 7 that remain, or something like that. So we'll see how that shakes out, but.
Interesting. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to us, sharing your thoughts with us.
Absolutely. It's fun.
Yeah, it's been great. And best luck with your business, man. We'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everybody.